The billionaire stood by his office window, looking out at the city below. He had everything he could ever want: money, success, a luxurious lifestyle. His company was thriving, and people admired him. But despite all this, there was a feeling of emptiness. A nagging sense that something was missing. He often thought about the community around him. He gave to charities, but it never felt like enough. He knew the world was full of people struggling, people who didn't have the same opportunities he'd had. It was a cold winter day when he noticed the homeless veteran. He had seen him before, sitting on the same street corner. This man wasn't like the others. His face was weathered, his clothes ragged, but there was something calm about him. Something that caught the billionaire's attention. The billionaire glanced at his watch. He had a busy schedule ahead, but something inside him told him to stop. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was a desire to make a real difference. He walked over to the veteran, unsure of what to expect. This wasn't just another charity case. This was different. The billionaire stopped in front of the homeless man. He could feel the cold wind biting at his skin, but the veteran didn't seem bothered. He sat with his back against the wall, a small cardboard sign in front of him. The sign read, "Veteran, will work for food." His eyes were calm, but there was something in his stare that told a deeper story. "Hey," the billionaire said, his voice tentative. "How are you doing today?" The man looked up slowly, as if he hadn't expected anyone to stop. His eyes were tired, but there was a quiet strength in them. He nodded, as if he'd heard that question 1,000 times before. "I'm all right, sir, just trying to make it through another day." The billionaire hesitated. He had seen so many people on the streets, but something about this man felt different. He looked like he had a past, a life before this. The billionaire crouched down, lowering himself to the veteran's level. "What's your name?" he asked. "Tom," the veteran replied. His voice was steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "I'm Michael," the billionaire said. "I can offer you a job if you want one." Tom's eyes flickered with surprise, then quickly masked it with a small nod. "A job?" he repeated softly. "I'd appreciate that." The billionaire offered a hand to help him up. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a chance. Tom showed up the next day, looking a bit uncertain, but eager. Michael greeted him outside his office building. "Glad you could make it," he said with a smile, trying to make him feel welcome. Tom nodded, adjusting the old jacket he wore. He seemed out of place in the polished office environment, but he was there, trying. "What do you need me to do?" he asked, his voice steady, but with a hint of hesitation. Michael thought for a moment. "We've got a lot of work in the back, sorting through supplies. You can help with that. It's not glamorous, but it's a start." Tom didn't seem to mind. He followed Michael inside and was shown to a small room at the back of the building. There were boxes of paperwork, old files, and supplies scattered around. It wasn't much, but it was a task he could handle. The first few hours were quiet. Michael observed Tom as he worked, noticing how focused he was. Despite his rough appearance, there was a certain precision to his movements, a discipline that Michael hadn't expected. He was working hard, no complaints, just doing what was asked of him. Over the next few days, Tom kept showing up. He was punctual, reliable, and his attitude remained positive. Michael was impressed. Tom didn't speak much about his past, but it was clear he was determined. He wasn't asking for pity. He was here to earn his way back. As the days passed, Michael began to notice something else. There was a quiet strength in Tom that reminded him of someone he once knew, a kind of determination that could change everything. A few weeks into the job, Michael started noticing something different about Tom. It wasn't about the work. Tom was still as reliable as ever. But lately, there were moments when he seemed distant, his mind elsewhere. His eyes would wander, and his shoulders would slump, as if the weight of something heavy was pressing on him. One afternoon, as Tom worked late into the evening, Michael stayed in the office a little longer than usual. He was reviewing some reports when he noticed Tom staring out of the window, lost in thought. Michael approached him quietly. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. Tom blinked, surprised to hear his boss's voice. He quickly wiped his hand across his face, trying to hide the fatigue. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, but his voice was strained. Michael could see that something was off. Tom wasn't just tired, there was something deeper. Something he wasn't saying. The next day, Michael decided to look into it. He didn't want to push Tom, but curiosity got the better of him. He started asking around. He made a few calls, checked public records, and slowly pieced together parts of Tom's past. What he found shocked him. Tom wasn't just a homeless veteran. Years ago, he had been a successful entrepreneur, running a business that employed dozens of people. But after an unimaginable tragedy, his life fell apart. He had lost everything. His company, his family, his sense of purpose. The more Michael learned, the more he realized that Tom had been living with the weight of his past for so long that it had become part of him. The successful businessman who had once commanded respect was now the man sitting outside, struggling just to survive. Michael couldn't help but feel a deep sympathy for him. But he knew there was more to this story. He needed to understand why Tom had ended up on the streets. A few days later, Michael sat down with Tom in the break room. The atmosphere was calm, but there was a tension in the air. Tom seemed uneasy, glancing at the floor as he took a seat. Michael leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Tom, I've learned more about your past, and I think it's time we talk." Tom's eyes flickered with a mix of surprise and guilt. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, unsure of how to start. He looked like he had been expecting this moment for a while, but he wasn't ready to share the truth. After a long pause, Tom sighed. "You already know, don't you?" he said quietly. "I wasn't always like this." Michael nodded. "I know you weren't. You used to have everything. A business, a family, but something happened." Tom's eyes dropped to the table, his fingers trembling slightly. "I had it all," he whispered. "A good life, a growing business, and then everything fell apart." He took a deep breath, as if bracing himself to relive the pain. "I was a soldier once. Came back from service, ready to rebuild my life. I started a business, met a woman, had a family. For a while, it was perfect. But then the war, it never left me." Michael didn't interrupt. He could see the weight of the words before Tom even spoke them. "The PTSD hit me hard. I couldn't escape the memories. I started making bad choices. I drank too much, pushed my family away, and eventually I lost everything. My business, my wife, my kids. I was broken." Tom's voice shook, but he kept going. "I tried to pick myself up, but the guilt, it ate at me. I thought I could never be who I was again. So I ended up here, homeless, alone." The silence between them hung heavy in the air. Michael had no words, but inside, his heart went out to the man sitting across from him. Tom wasn't just a homeless veteran. He was a man haunted by his past, trying to find a way to heal. Tom's story didn't stop there. The pain in his voice lingered, and Michael could see how hard it was for him to relive the past. But Tom wasn't finished. He looked up, meeting Michael's gaze. "I've tried to move on, tried to rebuild," he said, his voice quiet but determined. "But every time I tried, something held me back. The memories, the shame. It felt like I couldn't outrun it." Michael listened closely, not interrupting. He understood that this wasn't just about a job, it was about something much bigger. Tom wasn't asking for pity, he was searching for a way to heal. "I ended up on the streets because I didn't know where else to go," Tom continued. "I thought maybe being alone, away from everyone, would help me forget. But it didn't. Every day felt like a battle. I wanted to give up so many times." Michael could see the toll it had taken on him. Tom's eyes were filled with pain, but there was something else, something that had kept him going despite it all. Hope, however faint it may have been. "I know I'm broken," Tom said, his voice shaky. "But I still want to fix myself. I still want to be better. I don't know if I can, but I want to try." Michael felt a shift inside him. He had seen people rise from the ashes of their past, but this was different. Tom wasn't just trying to get back on his feet. He was trying to reclaim his life. Over the next few weeks, Michael decided to do more for Tom. He didn't just want to give him a job, he wanted to help him rebuild. He made sure Tom had access to therapy, support groups, and resources to help with his PTSD. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way, but Tom kept trying. Slowly, the walls around him started to come down. It wasn't a quick fix, and it wasn't always smooth. But each day, Tom made a little more progress. He began to smile again, to speak more freely, and to show a glimpse of the man he used to be. Michael saw the change. He saw the determination in Tom's eyes, the fight he had within him. And he knew. This was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, Michael noticed something different in Tom. It wasn't just the work ethic anymore. It was his entire attitude. There was a quiet confidence in his step, a spark in his eyes that had been missing before. Tom was no longer just going through the motions, he was starting to believe in himself again. One afternoon, Michael called Tom into his office. Tom entered with his usual calm demeanor, but today there was something else. He stood up straighter, his posture less defeated. Michael looked up from his desk. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone casual but serious. "I've seen how much you've improved, and I want to give you more responsibility." Tom's eyebrows furrowed slightly. "More responsibility?" he repeated, unsure if he had heard correctly. Michael nodded. "Yes. You've been doing great work here. I think you're ready for something bigger." There was a long silence. Tom hesitated, not sure if he could handle more, but something inside him told him to take the chance. "I'm ready," Tom said, his voice steady. "I can do this." Michael smiled, feeling a sense of pride for the man sitting in front of him. "I believe you can." From that moment on, Tom's role changed. He began working on more important tasks, overseeing projects, and even helping train new hires. Every step was a challenge, but it was one that Tom embraced with determination. The job was more than just a way to pay the bills. It was a chance to prove to himself that he could do more, that he wasn't defined by his past. But Michael didn't stop there. He made sure Tom had access to professional help, counseling, mental health resources, and programs that could support his ongoing recovery. It wasn't easy, and there were days when Tom wanted to give up. But Michael was there, offering encouragement and the belief that Tom could overcome his demons. The real turning point came when Tom began to realize something important. The man he was becoming wasn't a result of his job or his past. It was the result of his own efforts. He was learning to forgive himself and build a future beyond the mistakes that had once defined him. Months passed, and Tom's transformation became more evident. He wasn't the same man who had walked into Michael's office all those weeks ago. His face had softened, and his smile, once rare, was becoming more frequent. His work ethic was unmatched, and he had begun to truly believe that he could build something meaningful again. One morning, as Tom walked into the office, Michael couldn't help but notice how different he looked. There was a lightness in his step, a confidence that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just showing up anymore, he was owning his place in the world. "Morning, Tom," Michael greeted him, smiling. Tom looked up and returned the smile. "Morning, Michael." It wasn't just the job that had changed Tom, it was the way he viewed himself. He no longer carried the weight of his past as a burden. He had learned to face it, to accept it, and to keep moving forward. Every day was a step closer to the person he wanted to become. He had come so far, physically, emotionally, and mentally. The homeless man who had once sat on a street corner was now a valued part of Michael's team, someone who had earned his respect and trust. And while Tom still faced challenges, he no longer saw them as obstacles. They were just part of the journey, a journey he was determined to complete. One evening, Michael sat in his office, reflecting on the journey he had witnessed over the past several months. He looked out at the city lights below, thinking about how far Tom had come. It wasn't just about the success of the business or the progress Tom had made at work. It was about something deeper, something he hadn't expected. When he first saw Tom on that street corner, Michael had no idea how their lives would intersect. He had offered a job out of a moment of compassion, but he hadn't realized how much he would learn in the process. Tom had shown him the power of second chances, the importance of resilience, and the impact of believing in someone when they didn't believe in themselves. Tom's past was painful, filled with regret and loss, but it didn't define him anymore. What mattered was the man he was becoming. And that man had a future, one he was slowly but surely building for himself. Michael thought about the days when Tom had struggled, when he doubted himself and questioned if he could ever truly overcome his past. But now there was a sense of peace in him. Tom had learned to forgive himself, to heal, and to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it was. In the end, Michael realized something important. Sometimes, the biggest changes don't happen overnight. They happen step by step, one decision, one effort at a time.